Welcome to our second in this series, Putting the Amazing Back in Grace. We're calling these Grace Talks. They're kind of like TED Talks. We have a speaker give about a 15-minute presentation. Then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll have a panel of experts. So we got a great panel this morning, and we've got a great speaker. Very excited about this. So, as you know, Putting the Amazing Back in Grace, this series is going through the acronym TULIP, or what are more preferably called the Doctrines of Grace. The doctrines, the teachings of grace. And so this morning, we're going to have our own Pastor Young Kwang Kim come and speak to us about the T in TULIP, which stands for total depravity. So Pastor Young Kwang, come on up here, and we'll get rolling.
Good morning. It's a little nervous talking about total depravity in front of a bunch of Reformed, born and bred people like you guys. But we're going to get into it. As Rick mentioned, we're covering the acronym TULIP, right? That's the acronym for the 5 points of Reformed theology. And as Rick mentioned already, he's stealing all my thunder. We're talking about the T, total depravity. And it's a doctrine that describes the human condition after the fall that we read about in Genesis 3. And the doctrine says that we are totally depraved, which isn't all that flattering to, but that's what it says, and we're going to get into what that really means, what it means that we are actually bad. The people in the Western world, people like us, have throughout their lives, been told that we might not be perfect, but we are actually good, right? We are inherently good. So in that sense, this T, it might not be the most controversial letter in TULIP. It might not even be the most rejected letter from TULIP, but it might just be the letter that most people in our world today struggle with the most. It might be that letter. And because of this doctrine, common caricature of Reformed Christians is that, we are a group of people who are always grim and almost depressed, right? We say things like, "Oh, I'm a wretched sinner. I am no good and up to no good." We always just beat ourselves up because of our sinfulness, because of our own sins. I could go on about this caricature, but why talk about it when I can just show you a couple of memes that describes how the world sees us as Reformed Christians. And the first one is it's a basic one, It's Calvinist Santa saying that everyone is on the naughty list, and it's kind of self-explanatory. The second one needs a little more explanation. In 2010, the hip-hop DJ by the name of DJ Khaled released a song which, in my opinion, is one of the truest bangers in American music history. And the song is called "All I Do Is Win." You might not recognize the song, but if you ever went to a sporting event in 2010s, let me tell you, you have heard the song. The song goes, "All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, can never get enough." Right? The next meme that I'm about to show you is a parody of that, and it's actually about total depravity. And it says, "All I do is sin, 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 no matter what. Got sinning on my mind, can never get enough." And on the bottom it says total depravity. It's like that. I think that's pretty funny, and that's often how we are kind of understood in the world. And one last meme that I'm about to show you is the best description of the common misunderstanding about total depravity. A group of people go to Olive Garden, and nice waiter says, "Hey, welcome to Olive Garden. How are you good people doing today?" And a Calvinist in the group just slams the table, gets really angry, and says, "No one does good, not even one." That answer, though, it's not necessarily from Reformed theology. That is the Bible. That is Psalm 14. Right? So at first glance, it actually looks like the Bible does say that nobody ever does any good for any reasons in any given circumstances at any given time. But when we read Psalm 14 in its totality, we discover that it is more nuanced than that. So let's read Psalm 14. The fool says in his heart, there is no God, they are corrupt, their deeds are vile, there is no one who does good. The Lord looks down from heaven on all mankind to see if there are any who understand, any who seek God. All have turned away, all have become corrupt, and here's the kicker. There is no one who does good. Not even one. And as you can see in Psalm 14, what is corrupt and vile, what is totally depraved is not, it's defined as not seeking God and turning away from God. And in that context then, what is good and righteous is actually seeking God and turning to God. It is a very specific type of good and bad. And likewise, when total depravity says that we are all depraved and we can never do anything good, is a very specific type of good and bad. Tulip, people say that Tulip summarizes the 5 points of Reformed theology as laid out in the Canons of Dort. Canons of Dort is a document that we as a denomination upholds. It's like, here's scripture, and here is Canons of Dort, right? It's up there. Like, we use Canons of Dort to understand what Scripture says, what God is communicating to us through His Word. But even the best summary cannot do what the original does. What I'm trying to say is that this acronym TULIP cannot teach us, and total depravity cannot teach us everything that Canons of Dort is trying to teach us about human condition after the fall. So it might be better for us to look at the actual original document. And even though the T is the first letter in this acronym TULIP, it actually corresponds to the third point in Canons of Dort. In the third point, the first two articles kind of describes, the famous story of human creation. Human beings were created originally in the perfect image of God, but that perfect image was corrupted when the original sin came into the world through this event called the fall. And since that fall, this image of God in every single human being has remained corrupted. Then comes the important Article 3. It says, therefore, meaning because of the original sin in the fall, all people are conceived in sin and are born children of wrath, unfit for any saving good, inclined to evil, dead in their sins, and slaves to sin. The key phrase that I want to highlight here is unfit for any saving good. It implies that when it comes to the matter of salvation, no one does good, not even one. In fact, a tulip is all about salvation. I don't think it was in the original document, but in the copy of Canons of Dort that I have, and if you go to CRCNA's website and look up Canons of Dort, there is a subheading for every single article there, and this article has a subheading that says total inability. And I might even argue that might be the better T phrase for total depravity, because total depravity says, we're all completely bad, and that's confusing, and that's why we were having this conversation in the first place. But total inability tells us that we are just unable to save ourselves from this condition that we're all in. And as we can see, total depravity does not mean that we are all this epitome of evil, or that all we do is sin, sin, sin no matter what. It's not saying that, right? We are good. There's something good still remaining in us, and we do good things, yet none of that can actually lead us to salvation. And that's the point that Article 4 in the same point makes. It says, there is, to be sure, a certain light of nature remaining in all people after the fall, by virtue of which they retain some notions about God, natural things, and the difference between what is moral and immoral, and demonstrate a certain eagerness for virtue and for good outward behavior. That is to say, that the image of God left in us, although it is corrupted, still enables us to do good things. But it goes on to say, but this light of nature is far from enabling humans to come to a saving knowledge of God and conversion to Him. Psalm 14. No one seeks God, everyone has turned away from God. In that sense, I might even argue that the T here is not even a Reformed doctrine. It is an Orthodox Christian doctrine. Because it's saying that nobody can save themselves from this predicament that every single human being is in. Christians do not agree on everything, but if there's one thing that all Orthodox Christians can agree on, is the fact that we're all fallen human beings and we cannot save ourselves from this predicament, therefore we need a Savior. That's what total depravity is pointing at. The doctrine of total depravity teaches our human need for a Savior. And when we look at this T in the right context, this T shouldn't even be all that controversial within Christian circles, Orthodox Christian circles. Where it may be still controversial is in a secular environment. And it has nothing to do with the fact that we're all bad, though. I mean, we just laid it out. The T doesn't teach that we are just like absolutely 100% bad all the time. It does not say that. You know, both non-believers and believers agree that both people are both good and bad. Right? Where it may become controversial is it has to do with the need for a Savior. Because this potential controversy asks the question, do people need a Savior? As Christians, we say yes, of course we do. Non-believers would, of course, say no, they do not need a Savior. But when we listen to their stories, however, we get this sense that they realize that even their best selves, like if the best versions of themselves, somehow fall short of this moral and ethical mark that they have set. This definition of what it means to be good in their own worldview. Let me unpack that a bit. Moralistic therapeutic deism, well, I got ahead of myself. Moralistic therapeutic deism is a term that defines the most common belief system that Americans and most people in America or in the Western world subscribe to. In this view, there is a God who created and created and ordered the world, and He even watches over human life on earth, right? And He wants people to be good. The central goal of human life in this worldview is to be happy and feel good about themselves. And being good and doing good things are two primary ways to achieve that goal. Right? God is not particularly involved in this world, but He comes in here and then whenever there's a person who needs some guidance on how to be good. And at the end of the day, good people go to heaven. That's the moralistic therapeutic deism worldview in a nutshell. As it turns out, the most important question in this worldview is, am I or can I be good enough? Am I meeting that moral ethical mark? And this TV show that I preemptively kind of, announced to y'all, this TV show, The Good Place, tries to answer that question. The creator of this show, Good Place, his name is Mike Schur, and He's a smart, successful guy. He's a staple name in TV business. He worked on shows like SNL. I'm sure you all know that. The Office, and one of my personal favorites, Parks and Recreation. He's brilliant. He went to Harvard and worked on all these great shows. And before creating this show, he read a bunch of philosophy books to find his own answer to the question, can I or am I good enough? And he even recently published a philosophy book on his own, distilling every philosophy book that he had read in, lay people's terms, something that we can all read and understand, right? The Good Place, this show is funny and it is entertaining, but at its absolute core is the question, am I good enough or can I be good enough? It is the most accurate depiction of moralistic therapeutic deism. I highly recommend you check it out. The show is about these 4 individuals. There are 6 up there, but this... Let me explain. The older gentleman on the couch, he's an angelic being in the show. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm just going to say an angelic being. And this nice lady up there, not on the couch, but behind in the purple dress, she's also an angelic-esque being. So the rest are human beings. And the show is about these 4 bad individuals and their quest to become good enough to get into heaven, or the good place, as they call it in the show. But eventually, they realize even the best versions of themselves are not good enough to get them into the good place. So what they do is they demand a systematic change, this universal scale overhaul of the system that determines who gets to go to heaven and who gets to go to hell. And in the final season of this show, they actually get that overhaul. And they all end up in the good place. It seems like a happy ending, but if you pay attention closely to the final episode, you get this ominous feeling. Because, once again, the underlying question of this show is, am I or can I be good enough? And the answer is somewhat a yes, but with a huge caveat. It's a yes, but only if there is a systematic change. Under the current system, working out the terms of moralistic justification is an unending task. That's not my answer, that's Mike Schur's answer in the final episode. We know this because the main character of the show in the final episodes finishes reading this book called What Do We Owe to Each Other by the American philosopher T.M. Scanlon. And she actually reads that line. Working out the terms of moralistic justification is an unending task. That is to say, under the current system, moralistic therapeutic deism, people are unable to reach a point where they can say, I'm good enough. They're unable to reach a point where there is no need for moral improvement anymore. In other words, people are unable to get good enough to get into heaven or the good place. And isn't that what the T is teaching us today? Not only that, the same doctrine points to the fact that there has been a systematic change, this systematic overhaul in the person of Jesus Christ. It points to God's grace, the free gift of salvation through the Son, Jesus Christ. And I will just stop there, and you can grab coffee. I think we're going to set up the panel and stuff like that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to set up our panel. So if you need to get some more coffee, just take a break for a minute. You can stretch your legs, whatever, and we'll pick it up here in about 3 minutes.